Welcome to A Voice and Beyond. I'm so thrilled to have Dr. Michael Young joining us here today. How are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you.
It's such a pleasure. Uh, Dr. Young, now you are a professor by day, a medical instrument inventor by evening, and by night, you are a brilliant author. I love that. It's like you're the triple threat.
I think they're not necessarily exclusive, and I don't know if they all work in that order, but I do have multiple hats I put on at different times of the day, yes.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to just give a little bit of a background check here of you and your story. So, you have a degree in biology from Indiana University. You then matriculated to Rush Medical College for your medical degree and subsequently went to Loyola University Medical Center to complete your residency in urology. So you've been certified by the American Board of Urology, and you then went into private practice upon completing that training. And you've been on faculty at the University of Illinois. In amongst all that too, you've authored a series of books which are so fascinating, and that's what we're here to actually talk about is your books. But tell us a little bit about your career journey.
Well, I am the fourth generation of physicians in my family. Goes back a long way, and that was my inspiration. That was my uh, motivation to go into medicine, was that I wanted to be part of the family tradition. I wanted to understand what was being spoken at the dinner table.
Fair
And,
enough.
and so with that, I had, yes, entered medical school. I had wanted to be a surgeon and elected for urological surgery as my specialty. And I practiced for nearly 30 years in the Chicago area, Chicago and the northern suburbs. Um, and I loved it. I enjoyed the patients. I loved the surgery. But about a decade or so ago, I became very disenfranchised, very disappointed with the healthcare delivery system
Mhm.
regionally and nationally. I became very frustrated, and I felt I could do other things with my background, with my experience. And I wanted to teach, and I wanted to get engaged in innovation, in changes, and perhaps inventions with needed tools and surgery that I witnessed. And so 6 years ago, I decided to step out of clinical practice,
Mhm.
and I was afforded the opportunity to join the faculty at the University of Illinois in Chicago, where I currently have three faculty positions. I am in
Wow.
the Department of Urology, where I am the director of our innovation section. I am a faculty member in the Department of Biomedical Engineering, where I teach a course to medical students and engineering students in medical technology innovation. And then I function as a medical advisor at the Innovation Center at the university, which is a rather unique environment where we collaboratively design, develop medical instruments and surgical devices. So the writing was really an offshoot of my frustration and experiences in practice that I wanted to put in paper.
Mhm.
I wanted patients and providers to see what they were each experiencing. Many times, providers would complain. Patients obviously have multiple complaints about the system, but I wanted to write a book that they could both read about each other and learn, hopefully facilitate a dialogue rather than one of just frustration. And so I wrote the book, The Illness of Medicine,
Yes.
about those experiences. And then as a consequence of that, I decided to begin some fictional writing as I had worked on a new instrument that eventually got pushed on the back burner. And I said, well, wait a minute, this isn't. So I decided, let's write a book about the material. And rather than just bury the idea, I brought it to life by putting it in a novel entitled Consequence of Murder.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so the Consequence of Murder started the ball rolling as I was trying to, in a way, fictionalize some of my disappointments with the healthcare industry that I experienced in real time and had written about in a nonfiction book, The Illness of Medicine. I wanted to fictionalize those stories. I wanted to bring them to life sort of in a way that could drive home the same point, but from a different angle.
Yes. Yes.
So following Consequence of Murder, I wrote The Net of Deception and recently published To Cure or Kill. These three books I like to consider as a trilogy. I consider that they are all interrelated, but it took me three books to try to work through these problems that I witnessed in practice, just both in my own practice and observing how healthcare is evolving at home in the United States, and hoping that this is another means by which to convey some of these opinions.
Wow, that's an incredible story. Let's start with that first book, The Illness of Medicine. I know this one is nonfiction. So obviously it relates to things that you've seen, flaws that you've seen in the healthcare system.
Yes.
It must have really been serious for you to want to go and write a book about it. You must have been pretty angry at the time. So what was some of the, or frustrated, let's use the word
Yeah.
frustrated. What were some of the things that you were seeing? What were those flaws that actually inspired you to go and write about them?
Well, what was occurring is that I, as a practitioner, and that which I witnessed in my colleagues, was that physicians were losing control of their own domain. Healthcare was becoming owned, operated, managed by a corporate structure.
Okay.
And the corporate structure, to me, was more engaged in the metrics of monetary gain as opposed to the humanity of what is medicine about. And many of my colleagues, primary care physicians, who typically would spend a great deal of time talking to their patients, were now put on the clock. You have
Yes.
10 minutes, 15 minute,
Yes.
20-minute slots. You have to deal with a patient who you've known for 20 years, who may have multiple problems, but now you have to compress it into this meeting that is often now done on a computer, where you, the practitioner, are facing the computer screen and not even looking in the eyes of the patient. You don't have the time, you don't have the latitude to say, how are things? How is the family? No, you have to get right to the point, right to the
Yes.
problem.
Yes.
And your management has to be within a defined protocol that has been determined to be the most efficient, most cost effective, which, yes, it may work, but perhaps there's other ways to go about the same resolution of the problem. But because your practice is managed by this corporate structure, it is dictating how, when, and where you do things.
So when you talk about the corporate structure, and I do acknowledge too that we have the same issues here in Australia. When I book a medical appointment online, I have to specify how many issues I'm going to be discussing in that appointment. If it's one or two, you are allocated 15 minutes with your doctor. If it's any more than that, then you pay more and you're given more time. So that is done through the booking system. And that's only something that's come into play perhaps in the last, well, I would say since COVID. Now,
Yeah,
but
and I don't
who,
know how
yeah,
that can work. I
yeah,
don't know how that can work.
yeah,
If I'm taking care of a 10-year-old, that 10-year-old is coming because perhaps they have an acute injury or one problem. If I'm taking care of an 80-year-old, many of these patients are on half a dozen, if not more, medications.
mhm,
Each of those medications is for a particular problem. Many of these problems are interrelated. How can I possibly understand the comprehensive problem the patient is experiencing without delving at least superficially into all of these things and trying to pull them
yes,
together? Because nothing occurs in health in a vacuum. Everything is related, everything is attached.
mm,
And then you also have to deal with, well, what about emotionally? What about financially? What about the family? All of these things are related. You just can't
100%.
you can't just prescribe a pill and suddenly things are better. Maybe that patient needs physical therapy. That means time away from work. That means X, Y, and Z. You can't compress this into a 15-minute appointment.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
So
But
to answer your question though,
yes,
Marissa, I
yes.
became very frustrated with the organization and the management of how healthcare was to be delivered. And so the illness of medicine was my description, both by commentary and anecdotal experiences
Mhm.
about that situation.
But who is the corporation? Because you've
Ah,
said the corporation, is that government? Is it the pharmaceuticals? Who is that structure? What is that structure?
well, I think it's all the above and none of the above. When you think about it, in healthcare, who is controlling the management is really who is controlling the payment, the money. And to that, I would say the insurance industry is
Ah,
most responsible for a lot of what occurs, how long you can
wow.
stay in the hospital, how long you can be there.
I
There are
never
patients.
considered that. Sorry to interrupt, but
Oh,
no, I never considered the insurance companies. That's so obvious. I mean, that's because, yes, I mean, I have private health care and it costs an absolute fortune. I'm
yes,
paying $500 a month for my husband and I for some hospital cover and for all the other auxiliaries like,
of
optical,
course.
dental, whatever it is. And it
But
keeps going
how
up and up
up
and
and
up.
up? But that's relatively inexpensive compared to the United States.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Okay.
yes. Yes. And so if the insurance company is dictating who you can see and where you can
Hmm.
be seen
Mm-hmm.
and the protocol for how you're seen, they really have a control over the healthcare dollars. If we then look at the pharmaceutical industry, who up until recently, up until I believe a week ago, um, they could charge Medicare what they wished for drug prices. They could not be negotiated. I believe it was just a week ago that it was introduced that I believe 10 drugs now will have their price controlled, but that never occurred before. And that will continue, hopefully. But so the pharmaceutical industry sort of had the opportunity to charge what they chose. The
Mm-hmm.
device industry,
Mm-hmm.
um, there are patients, for instance, there's a case of a person who needed a knee replacement in California by the same doctor using the same device, the same knee replacement at two different hospitals. The price varied by $27,000.
27,000.
7,000.
Was one
And
a
that would,
public hospital and the other one a private
no, it
hospital?
had to do with the negotiation with the insurance company that was paying for the procedure and the device. So you had asked me
Wow.
who is controlling things. Yes,
Wow.
it is these entities, but you have to understand it is also the relationship that a particular hospital network has established with a particular insurer.
I get that. Yes.
So I can be sick and need to go to the hospital that is 2 minutes away, but because of my insurance relationship with my physician or my healthcare plan, I may have to go to the hospital an hour away.
Mm.
One is closer, more convenient, but this is the one that our plan has negotiated a relationship with. So again, it's pointing out to your question, who is in control? Who is the corporate structure? It's becoming very difficult to identify all of the players because the hospital is in a negotiation with the insurance company, which is in a negotiation with all the ancillary cares, whether it's physical therapy, what have you. Who manages all of those things? It's a Venn diagram of
Yes.
complicated issues. And unfortunately, you, myself, we're all patients and we're
Mm-hmm.
all paying for it. We're the commodity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a difficult question to answer in 2 minutes or less.
Yes, yes. No, that's so interesting. And all I want to say to that is prevention is way better than cure. I mean, if that doesn't inspire people to take better care of themselves right now when our medical and healthcare system is in such a mess, I don't know
But
what
we
will.
don't have that. But unfortunately, we don't have that in America. Prevention is not on the top list. For instance, I feel that we are much more interested in trying to sell disease than we are trying to sell a cure.
Mhm.
I
Well,
don't
there's
see,
money. There's money in
there's money,
disease. There's
there's
no
money.
money in a cure.
There's no money in the prevention.
In the prevention. Oh, yeah, yes, sorry. Yes.
We see television ads left and right for that magical pill.
Oh,
And these pills tell you, what you need and why you need it. They don't tell you if you need it. So we're selling the pill, but we're not selling exercise. We're not selling better sleep, better lifestyle. We're selling a product. So
yes.
infuriating.
I've seen that in the States because I do visit the States regularly. And I never cease to be amazed with the number of drug ads on there. And I mean, they're really long and descriptive ads.
Yes.
Like these ads, they feel like they go on for 5 minutes each. And
Yes.
they talk about, these miracle cures for all these types of 21st century diseases, which essentially lifestyle can fix or prevent. And
Yes.
then, but I love the disclaimers at the end. Don't
Yes.
take this, blah, 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 for all
Right.
these reasons. And literally, it lists like a million reasons why not to take the drug at the end as the
Correct.
disclaimer. And you think, you know what, I'm better off not
But what
taking it.
happens, but what happens is the patients get a pseudo education of the problem. And so now they come to me, the provider, and they're expecting this particular drug because they heard it advertised that this will cure everything
Mhm.
and it's a miracle, and they get very frustrated. So it causes the physician to almost become defensive while they're not prescribing that drug.
Mm.
Patients are demanding it based on
Mhm.
what they heard. They
Oh,
don't
yes.
really, they don't understand the problem completely. They only know the advertisement they've been told. So right there, you've created a schism between the patient and the provider. I want this drug, you're not giving it to me.
Yes.
And it goes on and on and on. And patients will go to the internet and get information. Oftentimes they will understand the words, but not the meaning. The meaning takes years to understand sometimes, the nuances of disease. You can't just go on and read about a particular condition for 10, 15, 20 minutes, an hour and think you have it.
Like Dr. Google.
Well, any doctor who gives you this 10-minute blurb, it's much more complicated. Now, I'm not saying everything mandates, a 30-year experience in managing, but patients come in armed with ideas. They come armed with concern, and I don't wish to negate their due process that they've done, but they have to also understand the physician is trying to understand all of the options, not just the one that they've been told about.
Yes. Yes.
So that too became a premise for the second book, Net of Deception,
Yes.
about the drugs and how they're sold.
I I love the story with with this one here. So with Net of Deception, it follows the lives of three affluent men. So tell us about that story. Give us the backstory about Net of Deception, because it is absolutely fascinating. And I
Well,
think
thank you.
there's parts of this that we can all relate to.
Well, Net of Deception follows exactly what we were just discussing, in that a patient is seeing and hearing things advertised, both on television and on the internet, about sildenafil, or the generic form of Viagra.
Mhm.
And men who have a strong need for help will climb any mountain to
Yes.
get that help.
Mhm.
And so the premise of the story was that a company is taking advantage of this need that these men have. And within the company is a nefarious character who uses their private health information for blackmail.
Okay.
And so it's trying to articulate the malfeasance that can occur with our most precious commodity, ourselves, our health,
Mhm.
that which we really shouldn't be relinquishing so easily online, but people will if it means they will get that prescription.
Mhm.
And I do take a bit of not anger, but frustration with many of these companies that I do see advertising on television for drugs like this. I have no problem with a patient going to a physician, getting properly evaluated, and
Yes.
then going and getting, if you want to get it through a European or a Canadian or Mexican pharmacy because it's less expensive, fine. But the evaluation shouldn't be so checkbox and incomplete, because some of these companies, and the one particularly that I wrote about in the book, is one where the physician is part of the company, so he or she will approve of it for everybody.
Right. Okay. Driven by money and greed.
Driven by money, of course. And
Mhm.
so the predicate of the book is really medical vulnerabilities, but the consequence of that is the overwhelming greed and entitlement that the owners of these companies try to exert on patients.
Yes. Yes. So the person who is being blackmailed is a politician.
One of
Is
them, yes.
one of them. Okay. So how likely is this that it can happen in real life? When you talk about this cyber crime, so basically they're being blackmailed. Is this truly possible in real life?
I think, I like to think that all of three of those books,
Mhm.
Consequence of Murder, Net of Deception, and To Cure or Kill, are fictionalized reality. None of them, I believe, are so out there that they can't happen. I think they all can. To Cure, or pardon me, Consequence of Murder was about a whistleblower within a company that is trying to illegally promote opioids. That did happen,
Okay.
right? The opioid epidemic did not just occur in a vacuum. It occurred because of very greedy companies. We see what just occurred to a number of pharmaceutical CEOs and companies for their malfeasance and behavior in trying to promote their drugs. And
Mhm.
so this book was about that, and a whistleblower is has been isolated by that company, and they wish to eliminate him. I'm sure that has, in some way or form, occurred to
Well,
cure.
sounds like a drug deal to me, like a just another drug deal where there's always someone that's going to get killed.
Well, I think if you want to look at the pharmaceutical industry, yes, and I don't mean to sound too extreme, but are these drug dealers in suits? What is happening in that pharmaceutical industry? I support the industry for what we need. We need them to come up with our vaccines, our drugs, our health. I have no problem with that, but it's the profiteering that has gone to an extreme,
Mhm.
um, that these companies are making so much money, and patients who can ill afford these drugs are the consequence. And we, for instance, we do know that medical care, medical costs are the leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States.
Really?
Um,
I
drugs
didn't
are,
know that.
yes, medical conditions leading to default, leading to such extreme bills and inability to pay is a leading cause of personal bankruptcy. And
Wow. I
so drugs
honestly,
are,
that is incredible. I did not know that. How can
so
that be
drugs are
allowed
part
to
of it.
happen? Isn't that part of we're a first world country. The US is a first world country. Shouldn't we have access to our most basic needs, and that is our health
Well,
care?
I hate to burst your bubble,
Okay, burst it. You already have.
but I would argue that United States healthcare is actually quite poor. I believe we are 30th in the world in longevity. 30th for all of our money.
Who's best?
I believe Japan. I
Okay.
believe. I may be wrong,
I wouldn't be surprised.
but we are 30th in longevity. We are first in obesity. If you look at infant mortality, we are way down on the list of where we ought to be. It's
Mhm.
shameful. And part of that reason is not the technology, but our healthcare system does not have the social safety net. We define infant mortality as up to a year post birth, and many patients, as you noted, are on Medicaid or some form of support, but it doesn't have enough to carry them through. So
Mm.
it is shameful when you look at the healthcare outcomes in America. So yes, we have the greatest technology. There is no question, and the innovation and the capability, but the implementation and how healthcare is delivered and our financial structure around healthcare, which is a whole nother can of worms,
Yes.
is an atrocity. It's the
What?
costliest
Yeah.
healthcare in the world, and it is by far one of the worst.
What's the point of having all that technology if people don't have access to it? Is it a bragging? Do they have bragging rights? Is that what it is? Well, look what we have, but then no one can afford it.
I, I think they're separate problems. We have the institutions to do the research. We have the innovative capability, but when it comes to accessing healthcare, the costs of healthcare,
Hmm.
we have a serious problem. And the financial structure around healthcare is also just a mess.
Yes.
So, so those problems that we just spent time talking about became the foundation for the novels. The
Mhm.
novels are fiction, but they're really not. They are predicated on our medical vulnerabilities.
Yes. So, what is the message that you're wanting to share? Because you've just completed your fourth book, but the
Yeah.
third in the trilogy, To Cure
Yeah.
and to Kill. So, what is the message in that book? What's the story in that one?
Well, to cure or kill has to do with the pharmaceutical industry directly, where one company is trying to advance itself by taking advantage of another company's research. And one has to believe that there is inter-pharmaceutical espionage going on. That's not a mystery.
And you can't blame the Russians for that one.
No, we can blame ourselves. We can blame, but that is, again, that is greed, again, in with a capital G.
Mm-hmm.
So I really, none of these books by themselves, well, they all stand alone, but I'm hopeful that if a reader has completed all three, they may walk away very upset, very angry, although the books all entail a fair amount of medical discussion and background. They all entail some form of very bad activity with bad outcomes for people.
Yes.
But unfortunately, I think that's what needs to be done to shake it up and let people say, whoa, this can happen. Maybe this is happening. You
Yes.
know, because I
Yes.
think our healthcare is something we can't control. We have lost that control. You know,
Yes.
when you have a
Yes.
healthcare problem, you're vulnerable. You're frightened, you're scared. Your whole world is on pins and needles until that gets resolved. Your family, your job, everything is predicated on your health. So I can't think of a scarier scenario than being a patient in an environment that is inherently dangerous.
What is your objective here? Is it to raise awareness and to educate people around all of this? And if so, how is that going to help people?
I have tried, when I wrote Illness of Medicine, I did an awful lot of radio. As I was interviewed about it.
Yes.
Um, and I wrote that book in 2018, and here we are 5 years later, and we're no better, and in some ways worse. So that didn't do anything. So I decided I'd write about it in a manner that perhaps makes people excited or frightens them more by putting it in this fictionalized world. Maybe that will allow an increased awareness or discussion about what could happen. I hope. But that is
Yes.
my point. That was
Yes.
my whole point, was to raise awareness, to make it a thrilling story, but you know, behind every thrilling story, maybe there's some truth.
But what can people do about it? Okay, so they have the awareness that this is now
Well,
happening in the healthcare system. Do they
we
have the power to do anything?
individually, probably not, but as a group, we're very strong. We can decide which companies we wish to invest in, which companies we choose to support. There are companies that are, people pick it and say, don't buy their products, don't use their products. We can choose politically, who do we elect?
Yes.
We can do that. Have we? Not always, but we can. We can decide within our companies we work with which healthcare plans are we going to accept as a group or not. We do have power, but our voices by ourselves is very weak. But I think collectively we can make change. But you first have to be aware of the problem, and you secondly have to come together to implement change.
Yes. And that's really difficult because when you think of the money that these corporations and institutions have behind them, that is a
Yes,
really big fight.
it's a huge fight, but we can't quit because what's at stake is you going to the doctor and not being able to voice your concerns appropriately, you having someone who is managed in a manner that is perhaps not the best. It's acceptable, No one could fault it, but boy, there sure are better ways.
Mm.
And it all comes down to who's controlling, the golden rule. He who owns the gold makes the rules.
Yes,
Right
yes.
now, the insurance industry holds all the marbles.
Mm. I've talked about this situation that I was confronted with and how education can make a difference. And that was recently, well, when I say recently, around March this year, I was diagnosed with COPD. But it was as a result of me telling my doctor that I would not be medicated for high cholesterol. And so I asked, and it was only because I knew about this particular test. It was a test, it was a coronary risk assessment that I went and had this test, and I was told immediately, oh, but you have to pay for it. And I said, well, how much is it? $200. I said, well, I'll go and have the test because it's going to cost me way more than that in drugs in over the next however many years. And I don't want to be medicated for cholesterol because it's only going to lead to other medications in the
Right.
future. So I went and had this risk evaluation, and it came back that I had zero risk of having any coronary problems. So I didn't need to be medicated. But the first thing the doctor said when they saw the reading of my cholesterol was, oh no, you need to be medicated. But
Yeah.
then having that test, that's where they diagnose a COPD. So I could have gone through life not having any awareness that I had this. I thought I had long COVID. However, that education around things that I could do to manage the COPD have had a significant impact on managing some of those symptoms. And not only that, but I'm now not medicated for high cholesterol.
Right. And but how many people would be willing to pay $200? We know, for instance, in the United States, that 45% of Americans could not afford a $500 emergency medical bill.
Mm,
They're not going to spend the 200 as a preventative evaluation. So
mm,
many people are living, on the edge with,
yes,
and so the idea of an individual having to pay for the preventative health care, to me, is really an atrocity. That should be something that the government needs to be taking care of, because downstream it will cost less preventatively than it will when that patient shows up in ER. You look at the number of diabetics, they can't afford to go to the physician on a quarterly basis. So then they end up in the emergency room in ketoacidosis. They have to be hospitalized for several days. We're paying for that. But
mm,
if they were able to go to the physician regularly, have those monitors done appropriately, whatever the testing is, whatever the disease is,
yes.
we stay out of that bottomless pit of financial expense that is killing our economy.
Mm. I know that everything that you're talking about and everything that you've written about, I can hear it in your voice. You're very passionate about it. And I think you're doing an incredible job writing these books and speaking up. But how has that been received by people within the corporation, within the institutions? Has anyone tried to silence you?
No, I don't think I'm a big enough fish, not yet,
Okay.
perhaps. That doesn't mean it won't happen.
Mm,
Right now, I'm ignored, and I
mm,
can't change that. I mean, I hope people will read what I've written. I hope people will listen to what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to be the voice of anger. I'm trying to be the voice of reason and
yes.
judgment about how do we go about managing these problems.
Mm,
But no, I have not had any any problems from any industry going after me.
Are they aware that you're promoting some of this information or spreading the word?
I don't know. I'm just one person,
You're like
and
that pesky bug that's in the room
maybe,
that people just go shoo and pretend it's not there.
well, I would say this. Perhaps it's being hopeful, but if Hollywood or the film industry, television industry were to pick up these books, perhaps that might be the platform that they realize not only is there good selling here, which is what they are
Yes,
trying, but there's a good
yes,
story here and there's a
100%.
message here.
Yes.
So maybe that's what it will take. It will take a step up in terms of exposure through some visual content.
Mm,
And I think I've put together some very interesting books, and it would be marvelous if they could be picked up in that manner. Um,
yes.
I don't think it would change my life. I'll continue to write and teach and do what I'm doing, but certainly that message may be able to get out better.
Mm. It's incredible. Is there another book in the pipeline?
There is
And
the
what's that
next
one?
the book will, well, two books actually. The next book of the medical predicate will be my concerns about the DNA companies, the companies that you can submit your DNA to and they will give you your heritage. Well, what if they
Okay.
could do a bit more? You are giving them a blueprint. I had identity theft a number of years ago. Someone got my credit card information and they used it fine. But when you give your DNA, you're giving your blueprint. You're
Yes.
giving the real identity theft.
Yes.
And what if that information is used in a manner far beyond where we're even capable today, right? We want to talk about blackmailing a politician. What if the DNA shows more information
Mm.
than just that you're 20% French or Eastern European or whatever they tell you? So the book will be about the DNA companies, and again, it will be fictionalized, but I don't think it's a far stretch to imagine where this could go.
No, no. Well, we don't know how they're using the information. And I didn't realize that it was the Mormon church that is behind the
Hmm.
ancestry.com. That's the one. Yeah. And
Yeah.
we don't know what other information they're gathering
Well,
from
let me
that.
just push it one step farther, Marissa.
Okay, you're going to scare me.
We don't know what technology lies 5 years from now to
Mm,
use that
mm,
DNA,
mhm.
right?
Yes.
We don't know where this is going. So that's what is on the horizon
Mhm,
for me.
mhm.
Again, using medical vulnerability as the predicate for this story.
Mm. So,
We'll
in
see.
other words, if you have a medical problem, go and visit your doctor. Don't buy the drugs online and don't give your blood to anybody.
I don't know if it's that simple or not, but be mindful of be mindful of what you click on your computer.
Mm,
Be mindful of what you watch on television and hear, and understand that you are trying to be sold something.
of course.
Whether or not you are needed as you need it is a different issue. But uh, be wary, be careful.
Yes, yes. And these people have a lot of money when it comes to marketing. They have big
Oh yes,
budgets. So they're going to make those ads as attractive as possible. So, in
yeah.
finishing up, Dr. Young, do you have any other advice for our audience?
I would like to think that common sense is common, but I'm realizing sometimes it isn't. Um, I think people they're anxious for answers. They want quick solutions, and I hate to say that there aren't any.
Yes.
Things take time. You have to, you can't take advice from a printed screenshot when you don't know who that screenshot is, who really wrote it. You need to find people you trust, people you know. Those are the people to get information from. You want to supplement it, that's fine, but don't believe that what you're seeing on that monitor is the holy grail of information.
Yes, 100%.
You have to be very mindful. Your phones, there's phishing, there's people trying to steal information. It's a very dangerous world. And I'm not saying you have to shutter your doors and not go out, but you do have to open your eyes and ears and pay attention.
I love how I get really suspicious because the other night, let's just say I was talking about, I'm going to make this up, buying a pair of red shoes. And then the next thing I got all these emails and things on my social going, oh, here's some red shoes.
Yes.
I just go,
frightening.
My phone is listening to me.
It's frightening,
scary.
isn't it?
It is scary how all of a sudden there was something random, like it wasn't red shoes, but it was something so random that I was talking about. Then all these ads started to appear on my phone and all these emails. I'm going, why? But anyway, we're going to wrap this up. It's been an absolute pleasure spending time with you, Dr. Young. I appreciate you being here on our show. And I suggest to the listeners that they go to the show notes, get on those links and go and read your books. We're going to share the links to you, to your books in the show notes. And I think it's fascinating what you're doing, and good on you for being the whistleblower in a fiction manner.
Yes. A fictionalized reality, I tend to call it.
Yes, yes. Best of luck with everything, and look forward to catching up sometime in the future. I'd like to hear how it's all going.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
so much. Okay, bye, Dr. Young.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.